You get a message on your phone. We're all going out tonight. You coming? And something strange happens. You like these people. Nobody did anything wrong. You know that if you went, you might even have a good time. But the moment you imagine staying home instead, you feel something almost instantly. Relief. So you stare at the message trying to come up with an acceptable excuse because apparently, I just want to be alone tonight, still doesn't feel like a socially acceptable reason. And maybe you've noticed this happening more as you've gotten older. You don't necessarily hate people. You haven't suddenly forgotten how to socialize. You just don't want everyone to have unlimited access to your time anymore. And psychology may explain why. Because sometimes becoming more comfortable alone doesn't make you antisocial. It changes what you're willing to leave your peace for. And if psychology and understanding yourself on a deeper level are your thing, subscribe to the channel. That's exactly what we explore here. Here's where things get interesting. When you're uncomfortable being alone, almost any company can feel better than no company. You accept invitations you don't really want. You keep conversations going long after you're mentally finished with them. You maintain friendships mostly because they've existed for years. You answer messages because leaving them unanswered makes you anxious. Sometimes you're not choosing connection. You're escaping solitude. But when you finally become comfortable with your own company, the comparison changes. You're no longer asking, would I rather be with someone or be alone? You're asking, would I rather spend time with this person, or keep the peace I already have? That's a completely different question. And it creates a much higher standard for who gets your time. Because solitude stops feeling like an empty room you need someone else to fill. It becomes somewhere you can think, read, or create, recover, or simply exist without having to respond to anybody. And once your nervous system learns what that feels like, unnecessary social interaction can start feeling surprisingly expensive. Think about what happens during even a normal conversation. You're listening, responding, reading facial expressions, deciding what to say, adjusting your tone, tracking whether the other person understands you, and sometimes managing their emotions while regulating your own. None of this means social interaction is bad. But it does require psychological resources. And here's something people often confuse. Social ability and social appetite are not the same thing. You can be warm, funny, confident, empathetic, and perfectly capable of talking to people, and still reach a point where your brain says, okay, that's enough humans for today. That's why someone can genuinely enjoy dinner with friends and still feel relieved when they finally close their front door. The enjoyment was real, and so is the need to recover. But there may be another reason certain interactions become exhausting as you grow. You start noticing the difference between connection and access. Not everyone who has access to you is actually connected to you. Some conversations are mutual. Others are basically emotional customer service. Someone complains for 40 minutes, asks nothing about you, feels better afterward, and somehow you're the one who needs a nap. Some people only contact you when they need something. Some relationships survive entirely because you keep initiating them. And some environments require you to constantly edit yourself. Don't say that. Pretend this interests you. Laugh here. Don't disagree too strongly. Be more enthusiastic. Be less intense. Don't make anyone uncomfortable. And after enough of those interactions, you may think you're tired of people. But sometimes you're not tired of people. You're tired of the version of yourself you have to become around certain people. That's different. And if that sentence describes something you've experienced, let me know in the comments. And if you're enjoying this video, leaving a like helps more people find it. Now this is where becoming selective can get uncomfortable. Because many of us were taught that being a good person means being available. Someone calls? Answer. Someone needs to talk? Listen. You're invited somewhere? Go. Someone asks for a favor? Help. You're exhausted? Well, don't be rude. So eventually saying one tiny word can produce an absurd amount of guilt. No. And suddenly your mind puts you on trial. Am I selfish? Am I becoming antisocial? What if they think I'm arrogant? What if they stop inviting me? What if I'm pushing everyone away? So instead of simply declining something, you begin constructing a legal defense. I'd love to come, but I have this thing tomorrow and I've been really busy and I didn't sleep well and... Sometimes you don't need a courtroom argument. Sometimes you just don't have the energy. A boundary doesn't automatically mean rejection. Sometimes a boundary simply means, I know what I have available today. And emotional growth often involves learning that disappointing someone occasionally is not the same thing as mistreating them. That's especially important because the more self-aware you become, the less powerful certain forms of social approval can become. Maybe you stop attending every gathering because you're afraid people will forget you. Maybe you stop replying immediately because silence no longer feels dangerous. Maybe you stop maintaining a friendship purely because you've known each other for 10 years. History explains why someone is in your life. It doesn't always explain why they should remain close to you. And slowly something shifts. Peace becomes more attractive than approval. Not because you believe you're better than everyone, but because you've started paying attention to what different environments do to you. Around some people you're relaxed. Around others you're constantly performing. Around some people silence feels comfortable. Around others you're desperately searching for the next thing to say. Some relationships leave you feeling more like yourself. Others leave you needing several hours to find yourself again. And becoming emotionally mature may mean noticing that difference without immediately judging yourself for it. But there's an important distinction here. Because not every desire to be alone represents growth. Sometimes isolation can become avoidance. So instead of asking only, "Do I like being alone?" ask a better question. What does being alone do to me? Healthy solitude often gives something back. You may feel calmer afterward. Clear. More creative. More emotionally regulated. You might spend an afternoon alone and later genuinely want to call someone you care about. Solitude restored your capacity for connection. Withdrawal can look different. You may become increasingly numb. More fearful of closeness. More hopeless. You may want connection but keep avoiding it because being seen feels unsafe. And the longer you withdraw, the harder reconnecting becomes. So the goal isn't maximum isolation. It's intentional connection. That's an important difference. Healthy solitude restores your capacity for connection. Unhealthy withdrawal can gradually reduce it. And if isolation is causing significant distress or making everyday life harder, that's worth taking seriously and talking about with someone you trust or a qualified professional. Because personal growth isn't about building such high walls that nobody can reach you. It's about finally installing a door and deciding when to open it. This is also why, over time, you may realize that you don't necessarily need more relationships. You may need more honest ones. Relationships where you don't have to perform constantly. Where a delayed reply isn't treated like betrayal. Where saying "I need tonight" to myself doesn't create a crisis. Where two people can sit quietly without feeling responsible for entertaining each other. Where you can have different interests, separate routines, and time apart without constantly questioning the relationship. Strangely, people who respect your need for space can become the people you want to spend more time with. Why? Because their presence doesn't feel like a demand. And maybe that's the better measurement of connection. Not, "How many people do I have?" but, "Around whom can I remain myself?" Think about that for a moment. Who can you be quiet around? Who doesn't require a performance? Who can hear no without punishing you? Who leaves you feeling understood instead of depleted? And who makes you feel like you're constantly auditioning for your place in their life? If you've ever been called distant, antisocial, cold, difficult, or even arrogant simply because you needed more space, you probably know how confusing this can feel. Especially when you actually do care about people. You can love someone and still need distance. You can enjoy a friendship without wanting constant communication. You can value connection without wanting your phone to function like a 24-hour customer support line. Those things can exist together. So here's a small experiment. Imagine you suddenly have an entire evening free. Nobody needs anything. No invitations. No messages requiring an immediate answer. No obligations. Just you. What feeling appears first? Relief? Anxiety? Peace? Loneliness? Curiosity? Do you immediately reach for your phone? Do you want to call someone? Or does your mind begin thinking about the book you've wanted to read, the project you've ignored, the walk you haven't taken, or simply doing absolutely nothing? There isn't one correct answer. But your answer can tell you something important about your relationship with both solitude and connection. Because the goal isn't becoming someone who needs nobody. Extreme independence can become another kind of prison. The goal is being able to stand on your own without convincing yourself that closeness is weakness. To enjoy silence without fearing intimacy. To say no without unnecessary guilt. And to say yes because you genuinely want to be there, not because you're terrified of what will happen if you aren't. Eventually, emotional growth may change the question you ask about relationships. Instead of asking, "Do they like me?" you begin asking, "Do I like who I become around them?" Instead of, "Will they be upset if I say no?" you ask, "Why does protecting my energy require their permission?" And instead of, "How do I make sure nobody leaves?" you may begin asking, "Which relationships allow both of us to stay without abandoning ourselves?" That's not becoming cold. That's becoming conscious. Maybe growing emotionally doesn't make you want fewer people. Maybe it makes you want fewer performances, fewer obligatory conversations, fewer relationships maintained by guilt, fewer situations where you return home emotionally exhausted because you spent hours pretending to be comfortable, and more relationships where your nervous system doesn't have to work overtime. So maybe the healthiest version of solitude doesn't teach you that you don't need people. Maybe it teaches you something much more useful, which connections are actually worth leaving your peace for. Now I want to hear from you. What drains you more, being around too many people or being around people you can't fully be yourself with? Comment too many people or wrong people below and tell me why. And if this video helped you understand yourself a little better, leave a like. And if you want to go even deeper into the psychology behind solitude, connection, and why some people genuinely prefer their own company, watch the video that's appearing on your screen right now. I'll see you there.